welcome. My name is Errity Green, and this is Wise Women Oracle and Tarot. And today I am bringing you a pick a card reading on your truest, deepest yearning and desire. So we're going to go deep today and really touch on the deepest desire that you actually yearn for, even though you might think it's all of these things. You might have a conscious desire, but what is the root of that, the origin, the truth of that? So we're going to be diving into that today. If you find you enjoy the reading, I encourage you to like, subscribe, press the bell icon. That way you receive a notification every single time a new video pops up. Also, you can check out more about me, my work, as well as personal readings at erritygreen.com. You can also find the links below. And last but not least, I do have two other YouTube channels, Psychic True Crime and Wise Women Television. In the event that either one speak to you, of course, links are below. So without further delay, I will place a picture up of your 4 card piles to choose from today. As always, you are choosing from left to right. All right, so card pile 1. Your deepest yearning and desire. So for many of you, you're coming out of a long pause, hibernation, period of self-reflection. You're coming out of a time of maybe some repairing yourself, tending to your wounds, licking your wounds. Some of you, I feel like we're in a period or phase of transition as a result of the loss of a relationship, disillusion or breakup or fallout in a relationship, but it feels like there's been some significant space since that connection. But I feel like, and this isn't going to be for all of you, I would say maybe like a 70-30 kind of mix here, because some of you it's going to look different. And of course, apply the energy to your experience, because it could have been a breakup with a job, it could have been a breakup with your family of origin, it could have been a breakup with life, like you're done, you know. Maybe you found yourself confused and had a breakup even with your career. One way or another, you had a breakup with an old identity. And again, for many of you, if not most of you, more like many, it feels like it was a breakup, a significant connection in your life that it feels like you were incredibly wrapped up in with, in terms of like that became your identity. And so when we experience things in our lives so closely and intimately, or we develop this really sort of, we could say close, but we could say tight-knit attachment to it, it's like we tether ourselves so closely that we become it. And so then when it falls apart, or something changes, and or there is some kind of disconnection, it falls away one way or the other, we feel like there's nothing left of us. It feels like a soul loss. It feels like, even though it's an identity loss, it's an ego death more than a soul loss. It's a breakthrough of the soul and truth, because the soul can now shine more brightly. It can come into its greater expression. It can come into its truer form, because it's not being held down, back, or bound by an old identity that no longer suits it. You grew too big for your britches at one point or another. It feels like many of you maybe started to question things or found greater clarity within yourself. For some of you, this breakup in a relationship anyway was unexpected. Whether it was by surprise and or you were already having some questions and or clarity of your own come up, one way or another, you ended up in a breakup. And again, however you can apply that breakup, because I also feel like some of you broke up with family. There was a time period of where you're not in communication. You may very well not be in communication any longer with that family of origin, with that partner, and or with the old career, the old job, the old degree, whatever it was that you had to let go of. But here's the thing. You're on the path now of, after this great cocooning, or what's the word, hibernation, you're sort of coming out of that. You're like the groundhog on Groundhog Day, where you're coming up and peeking over the side, and you're ready for the new frontier, for the next chapter, for the new thing, for the new you. It doesn't feel like you're full-fledged, accelerated 110 miles an hour right now in that regard. It feels like it's new. It feels like it's still a little bit tender. It feels like there's still a part of you that might still be in cocooning and or hiding, and yet you are coming out of your shell. Just like a little baby birdie, the egg starts cracking, and it doesn't like burst out and say, I have arrived. You know, that doesn't happen right off the bat. Usually the shell cracks, and maybe mama bird notices, and cheep cheep, or whatever word, you know, sound they make. And then after a little while, the baby breaks through that egg, and here we are. And so I feel like that's where you're at, sort of breaking through out of that shell. Now, something that's important and significant for me to mention here, and I think it's important because not all of you have recognized this, whatever it was that you lost was purposeful, it was intentional, it was conscious, it was by intelligent design. This happened so you could come into your truer form. those old identities, whatever it was that you ended up losing, or whatever it is you were made separate from, whatever it was that sort of fell out of your life or left your life in one way or another. It was a necessary change in order for you to come into your more authentic truth, your more authentic self. Again, you're growing too big for our britches. Oftentimes, we may not even realize it, and the next thing you know, all these things are changing, and it was more or less something that we asked for or called for with our own inner changing. And so it's like the wheel of fortune turns, and now it's our time to really step into our truer or fuller expression, and some things have to go. And again, it's usually things that are parts of our identity, and oftentimes we're not ready to let go of those things. Now, part of this, though, isn't necessarily that just things have to go. It's not just like, oh, the universe is like, oh, well, this has got to go. I mean, sometimes that might be the case, you know. I very much trust the intelligence, much more than I would say trust my ego self. With that said, it feels like a lot of times this stuff falls away so that we can become clear on what was based in ego identity and what's based in truth, okay? We can't always see ourselves clearly. If we've kind of done the same things or always remain in our comfort zone, we're going to assume that that's the reality, if that makes sense. We have heard this analogy before. A baby in the womb thinks that's all there is. Oh, this is the womb. It's quiet. It's somber. I hear a heartbeat. Okay, this is easy. They don't realize there's a whole world outside of that, but how would they know until they are born? And so for you, a lot of this stuff sort of falling away was necessary for you to see yourself more clearly, so that you could come into your greater expression. But seeing yourself more clearly is significant here. Perhaps in some way, this old identity, old career, old path, old person, whatever, was preventing you from seeing yourself clearly and or keeping you bound or limited in some way, but especially as related to your perception. Was there a self-worth issue here? Were you not really seeing your value? Were you not really seeing your worth? I feel like many of you, that would be a root cause or origin of this, whereas you weren't able to live as your true self, like truly valuing yourself, that level of self-love within that reality, within that identity. And so a lot of that had to go, not necessarily even, again, because things have to go. I think we can assume that things just got to go. They no longer serve us. Like, how many times have we heard that? But in truth, sometimes they don't serve us because we cannot see ourselves clearly within those connections or within that context or whatever. It's more about us and our own perception and our own limitations than it is about the other thing. So you went through a deep hibernation, deep healing phase, deep reflection after the loss, after the breakup, whatever it was, and you're sort of shifting out of that. The deeper yearning or desire is to come out of that. I do feel, I will say, some, not heaviness, I don't like that term, I think it's used in a way to sort of maybe make things bad or wrong. But I do feel a heavier energy in that, for a time when we're resting, that feels heavier than when we feel light and fancy free, right? And so when we're tired, we feel heavier, closer to the ground, feel a little bit more of the weight of gravity. So I do feel that for many of you. So some of you still might be either in the thick of it and or moving toward the tail end, and you're here and you're like, what in the heck, what's going on here? What is my yearning, my true desire? And for you, I feel like it is to come into your truer expression, your fuller self, your more authentic self, your greater truth. You might not know that. It might be hard to see. And again, a lot of this had to happen so that you could see it, so you could get to know it, so you could sort of align yourself with this greater timeline or potential. I don't feel like all of you are like gung-ho ready, like, I am ready for this, I'm excited about that, I'm ready for new birth. I don't feel a lot of that energy. I feel more of that hibernation energy still weighing relatively heavy. But it's almost like when you're really sleepy and you're sort of coming out of that energy and kind of waking up, and you might go outside, have some fresh air, sunshine, and you sit there for a little while, and maybe you mindfully get a coffee or a beverage or whatever, and you're stirring awake the senses, and then the next thing you know, you're really starting to sort of, get the wheels turning and the juices flowing again. It doesn't feel like you're quite there, and I think there might be a message in that too, in terms of if you ask yourself, how do I come out of this? Will this ever end? Will this ever be over? Will I ever stop feeling this way? Will I ever get over this person? When will I no longer feel depressed, cold, numb, distant, turned away? Whatever your version of that is, I think that's what it is. You're like, your truer, deeper yearning, it's like I don't think you're like ready to go, like full of zest and, oh, let's, the Fool and the Tarot. I don't feel like that's where you're at. You're much more like, when will this end? And part of this, what wanted to be revealed today for your particular reading card, pile 1, is that you went through this transition specifically for coming into your more authentic self, your greater truth, self-expression, as well as coming to know your own truth, value, worth, and purpose. But also, whatever those things were, they don't and didn't define you. Like, I feel like for a long time you were wrapped up in these things as if they defined you. And the universe, because you defined yourself by them, that's why they had to be taken. And again, I don't always love how the universe works. Let's be real, all right? And I recognize the gravity of what I'm saying here. It's like when we become so attached to something and we can't see ourselves clearly again, if we're defining ourselves by that, it's almost like it has to go so that we can, again, see ourselves clearly. You weren't meant to define yourself by that career, by that trajectory, by that job. Some of you, I feel like, lost a job, or again, changed degrees or lost a degree, or, somehow were let out of school, or something changed. And it was a big loss of identity. It was an ego death. But that had to happen in order for you to no longer define yourself by those things and really find out who you were truthfully on the inside. So let's see what's coming up here. Yeah, you were meant to sort of stand alone. And I don't want to say stand alone like you actually have to be alone. My foot's asleep. That rarely happens, but it's happening right now. You're meant to stand alone. And I don't mean like stand alone like you have to be alone or be unsupported. I do feel like many of you have walked this journey relatively in solitude, relatively alone. Some of you may have been lonely, especially those of you who used to be a workaholic at this job or career or school, or some of you were obsessed with your partner and that was it was all your input, So I think some of you might have found yourself lonely, but you were meant to come out of this learning to stand alone, meaning nothing defines you, nothing limits you, nothing has power over you, nothing controls you, nothing influences you unless you say it does. So you could really discover that personal power, as well as a greater expansiveness of self-love, meaning, again, you're not defining yourself by all these other things and external agents and people and whatever. You've come to know yourself as you are, as opposed to an extension of all these other things. So you were meant to come out of this to be able to stand alone and, again, see yourself clearly undefined. And maybe that's what it was, your yearning, your deepest true desire is to come into a place of being undefined. And it doesn't mean that, you can't come up with adjectives and descriptors for yourself. I mean undefined, meaning you're not overly attached to any one thing such that it breaks you completely and there's nothing left of you when it goes. That's our sign. And I know a lot of movies and shows and music condition us to believe that that's love, but that's not really love. Now, when someone spent 80 years together and they've been married for 70, okay, yeah, probably not going to work out. Meaning if one of the partners dies, it's likely the other person will be lonely, all right? But within reason here, and speaking to maybe some generality, we aren't meant to completely fall apart. Our whole identity isn't gone if someone leaves, or if a school situation happens, or if a job or career or whatever situation happens. We should still, we can be okay in the morning being us just because we're alive and we've had a breath and we're just standing there. That's enough, right? That is fulfilling. We are enough. That is enough. We don't need all these other things. It's nice that they're there, and how fulfilling is it, and how beautiful it is to share this experience and this life with everybody. And yet, if we have to, if we wake up and we're like, okay, the job, or wake up and we're like, okay, the person, or okay, whatever it is, that's telling us where we are, again, starting to define ourselves by a thing as opposed to who we are, as opposed to what this whole experience is. So let's see what else is here. Yeah, so you're meant to stand alone and really come into true form. Again, come into your own authentic expression, really get close to your heart's desires. What is it you actually truly want? So beyond the career that you thought you wanted, beyond the school degree that you worked so hard for, beyond whatever identity you had built up, this person, this connection, job, career, you name it, it's going to be unique to you. Beyond that, because clearly those weren't true. The things that last forever, the things that are eternal, are the things that are true. Things that can fall away are not ultimately true. Okay, and sometimes things are true for a time and then they're not. And for you, you were meant to come into greater connection, union, and knowing of your own heart's desires. So beyond the boyfriend or the girlfriend, beyond what you guys are going to do this weekend, beyond getting drunk this weekend, and beyond so-and-so's wedding and baby shower, and or beyond that work, that test, that job, that goal, that aspiration, beyond the money bags, and all the things that we define ourselves as humans, it's like, who are you and what do you want truly? And that's where you're coming into, and Spirit's guiding you. If you haven't done this work already to gain this deeper clarity, you're being guided toward that, to really uncover your heart's deepest desires. And it's ironic because you came here to find that out, and I'm telling you this is what you're supposed to find out. But it's basically like, the reason is it wants to tell you why this happened. You know, you're being offered some context and insight around why this had to happen, you know, what has been happening and what you're coming into, which is greater self-knowing, greater self-expression, coming into your truer form, and really getting to know your truest, deepest desires. And I think for you, card pile 1, that's the whole point, is learning that, is learning who you are uniquely, without all these accolades, without these labels, without these badges and certificates and degrees and jobs and the people and the friends that you hang out with and all the things, the family of origin. You know, who are you basically beyond your conditioning? And that's what you're being asked to look into, to explore. Yeah, and this is also a time of healing. And so I know we talked about that, and that's just a redundant message here. So I won't go too much into it. But we do have softly, softly, the tender touch, and grief, loss, mourning, but ultimately resurrection. Your resurrection, basically that's what this is, right? What's your truest, deepest desire and yearning? It's to come into this resurrection of your greater truth, wholeness, expression, authentic form, authentic self, where you sort of let all these other things go, or, you know, we're forced to let them go, and discover sort of slowly and surely on your own awakening journey, awakening of the self, you know, who it is you really are, what it is that you really want, and being really honest about what matters to you. Maybe what you thought mattered didn't. Maybe what the world tells you matters doesn't. And so that's going to be up to you to determine and decide. And that's going to be up to you to determine and decide. You know, I know you might be here to ask that question, but there's a mirror here, and it's saying, no, we want you to explore that. That's what you're going through this for, so you can really determine. Now, I'll share with you very briefly, I've been through a similar transition or experience in the past, and at the time when my life was sort of bigger and bolder and more of a hustle and all the things that were kind of wrapped up in conditioning, I was much busier, much more of a workaholic. There's so many things that I can't even get into because it would just be way too long. But the point is, like, I was living downtown and all the things. And then as I went through this journey of really getting to know myself, I found, you know, now I've been at a farm. I'm gonna be my 3rd year here in August, where I'm living on a farm with horses 25 minutes away from the city. You see what I'm saying? That's one little example of how we can get caught up in conditioning and not even realize it. There's just so much momentum there. We automatically kind of find ourselves in that flow. That current just moves us right along. So you're being asked to step out of that current, really ask yourself, what is it that I really want, and where is it that I really want to go based on who I really am. So card pile 1, that's your reading. If this lands for you, if this resonates, I encourage you to like, subscribe. Please do share your story in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. If you want to get to know more about me, you can check out my details below, or at erritygreen.com, where you can purchase personal readings. I do have 2 other YouTube channels, Second True Crime and Wise Women Television. Both are linked below. And with that, I will bid you farewell and see you next time. Thank you, card pile 1. All right, card pile 2. Your deepest yearning and truest desire. So I feel like for many of you, or for most or all, you've been working towards something for a very long time. Now, whether this is a goal, aspiration, dream, or vision, or if it's just in general, you've been hustling and doing the thing and working your ass off. In one way or another, you've really been devoted and disciplined and committed to something. Now, for some of you, it's by choice, you know, for a dream, a goal, an aspiration. For some of you, it feels like sort of that survival mode of like, I'm doing what I must do, I'm doing what I have to. Now, some of you in that camp, though, are telling yourself that when it's not real. Now, for some of you, you very well will have like practical constraints and considerations. Now, all of you are going to say that's the truth, but I need you to look at yourself and be 100% honest, transparent with yourself to make sure that you are being real with yourself. You know, is this a story or is this fact? Is this a fact or is this feeling? Because some of you might say, that you have to work this hard, but in truth you don't. So some of you, really card pile 2 where I'm at so far, and I've barely touched on the cards, so we'll see, and maybe this will be clarified and or defined more specifically as we go, but I'm feeling like a break. A break. What do you really want? A freaking break. Now we're going to go deeper into this, but it feels like for a long time, because you've had to hustle or grind, be on the hamster wheel, do the thing, whatever. And again, I'm very much feeling the energy for some of you that you tell yourself you have to, and or you set really really unrealistic goals for yourself, like something that's, you know, people don't realize when they set a goal or a vision, and they oftentimes assume, like at least in the beginning, naively, innocently, ignorantly, that they're going to accomplish like all their dreams in a year or 3 or something. And so they work really freaking hard and they work themselves to the bone. And then they find that, okay, number one, they get burnt out, the well dries up, and or their dream hasn't been accomplished yet. So nothing's come to fruition. So it was like, what was all the work for? Most times our bigger dreams, visions, aspirations, goals, they come through sustainable effort over years, if not decades of a lifetime. You know, our life's work, our life's aspirations and goals will likely, like the energy is something that's much more sustainable over 5-10 year period than it is something that we're going to be able to rush, force, or hustle, you know, in a 6-month period of time. I think each of you are going to be aware as I'm saying it. If it's not landing, then it's not the reading for you, but I trust that you chose the right reading for you. So for those who are listening, I really feel like you know where you're overworking. It's overworking is what this is. It's workaholism, kind of working yourself to the bone, but you don't have to work as hard as you keep saying that you have to. And it doesn't mean that things might not have to change, or you might not have to, there might not be a cost or a sacrifice or whatever that's required in order to get you to a place where you don't have to work as hard. But I feel like a lot of you, it's a story. So first of all, many of you need to be looking at that and determining, okay, is this real or is it not? Where am I still believing that this has to be hard? And where am I still telling myself I have to work my ass off when I actually don't? You know, and then asking yourself what your truer values and desires are. I know that's why you're here, but I think for some of you, I mean, clearly, especially if you're on this channel and you landed here, your values might be something totally different than what you're adhering to. You know, maybe you value health, wellness, well-being, human welfare, you know, maybe you really value harmony, peace, fulfillment, joy, simplicity, and yet you're working 80 hours a week trying to get a promotion to CEO. You know, whatever your version of that is, it's going to be different for each of you. And it's like, well, wait a second, those are your values, but what are you actually doing? You know, and then when we say, well, what are you actually doing? Well, what are you telling yourself? So that means you end up translating that to what you're doing. So there's an opportunity for some deep self-reflection and examination here, because here's what's happening, or what needs to happen. What's happening is when you're in this zone, this flow, this hustle and grind, this kind of trying too hard or overworking, what ends up happening is a lot of your emotions, experiences, feelings, sensations, they get sort of repressed, denied, shoved underneath the surface, and everything just kind of simmers there. So you're not processing your emotions, you're not able to, you don't have the space, and or, you know, it's going to be this kind of underneath the surface boiling. So you might be quick to anger, right? You might be quick to anxiety. You might just be walking around with anxiety all the time. If we're having those kinds of experiences, that tells us that, you know, if we're a tea kettle getting ready to blow, right? If we're, you know, constantly anxious and jittery, that's not how we're supposed to be. There's something there. Now, some of you might say, oh, well, that might be something deeper. That's my wounding. It might very well be. And there's something here about your overworking too, the energy that you're remaining in. And again, there's a deeper healing that wants to happen to sort of reveal to you, maybe even where this pattern comes from, the origin of this pattern. And it's almost like once you become very honestly, clearly, transparently aware of it, it all starts to unravel. So how I see it, if you can imagine like a thread, like a DNA, where all the strands are sort of wound up together, you know, and they're kind of tugged pretty tightly, I mean, right? Or relatively speaking, it's like when you start to look at it and recognize, you know, you start looking at this pattern, observing it, noticing the impulse to get up to do something, noticing the extra calls, the social media, the checking messages, the checking email, the picking up the extra work shift, the one who's going to do it all, the volunteer, all that stuff. You just start observing it, feeling into that impulse, letting things be more of an observer than an active participant in your experience. That's going to start unraveling. And anything that you need to know or perceive or receive around this pattern, in order for you to move forward and or evolve, heal, and grow, it's going to be revealed to you. But right now, it's almost like you don't want to have to look at that. You don't want to have to work through that pain, the anguish. You don't want to have to face the origin or the root cause or any of that stuff. What tells me that? Well, because you're avoiding it completely with your hustle and grind. You might even be telling yourself you're not avoiding it, but here we are. So I feel like there's a deep healing and replenishment, card pile 2. Your deep yearning, your truest desire right now for you in this season of your life is deep healing and replenishment. To really be, it's interesting because re-energized isn't even the word, recalibrated isn't the word. It really is replenishment. There might be an empty well there. There might be sort of a shell of a person when you're honest. Some of you aren't going to want to be honest. Some of you want to continue working hard until kingdom comes. Some of you want to keep working so hard in order to reach that goal or hit that breakthrough. Some of you are going to continue to want to be dishonest with yourself in favor of the thing that you tell yourself you need or have to do. For some of you, you're ready, and you're ready to be completely honest with yourself and transparent and say, I'm done. And whatever that requires of me, I'm done. Like, it doesn't matter what it requires of me, no longer, no more. And that's what you're here to discover, honestly. And so you can begin to unravel this pattern and let some of those deeper breakthroughs, deeper insights, deeper wisdom, deeper lessons, deeper patterns be revealed, so you can continue to sort of shift out of that and into a new timeline, a new potential, a new reality, a new outcome. Yeah, deep replenishment and healing. This great turning inward. It just feels like a time of deep, deep healing. This isn't going to be possible for all of you, and I know for many of you, it's almost like F you, Errity, for even saying it. And the reality is, it's never been possible for me either. But at the same time, too, it's also, we do, again, have to examine where our stories are. So always being honest with yourself, especially with this pile. I don't get that with every pile. So you guys might have a tendency to lie to yourself and tell yourself you have to do something when you don't. So do take a clear look at that. But what's to come through here is, what was I even talking about before I got on to that disclaimer there? Give me a moment here. That's what it was. It was a sabbatical. To the extent that you can take a sabbatical and really get some time away. I mean, this feels like maybe 2 years of time that you need. Now, not all of you are going to be able to take a sabbatical. Again, most of you are going to be like, F you, and I get it. But to whatever degree you can create a sabbatical in your everyday life so that you have space. What you need is space. Card pile 2. You need space. Okay. So I'm saying physical space, not filling up your calendar, not filling up your time, not feeling booked up to the wazoo, all the things. Okay, you need emotional space, meaning you need the space to be able to process your emotions, to observe how you're feeling, to even note how you're feeling, to allow yourself to feel, even to allow yourself to be lazy and indulgent, okay? And even observe that too and experience that in yourself too, okay? We said, mental space, meaning not constantly consuming new information, new media, on social media, reading a new article, reading a new book, blah, 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 blah. Maybe you're someone too who might do a lot of certifications and courses and this and that. Mental space, emotional space, physical space, and spiritual space. So those of you who are either practiced in spiritual work, energetic work, you might focus on energy clearing. You might focus on regular energy clearing more consistently, and or you might focus on working with a practitioner who can support you in that way. That's something that I do, although I tend to refer out for that. So if you need any support or are seeking for something like that, do let me know and I can get you to the right place. But you really need that space. You haven't had the space to allow this deep emotional healing that needs to happen in order for the next shift, the next level up. Like you're saying, I've been working so hard, but that is never going to change. I don't want to say that, actually. That doesn't feel right. That is not going to change. I don't want to be so definitive and sort of like, it doesn't matter. It's not going to happen, that change that you seek, until this is shifted. The emotional template needs to change. Does that make sense? The blueprint, the energy needs to change. That's not going to happen riding on the hamster wheel, running on the hamster wheel. If your template is running on the hamster wheel, when you're honest with yourself, because some of you are going to say that you don't or that you have to. Again, you're going to have to look at yourself honestly here, and if you can't, get the help to do that. I don't care if it's a therapist, mentor, teacher, coach, whatever. You might need someone to really help you with this, especially card pile 2. A lot of you are going to tell yourself that you can't change it, and then you're going to turn away from this reading and not change it. And then you're going to wonder why in 10 years nothing has changed. and it's because nothing has changed. So card pile 2, you're being asked to create more space in your life so this deep healing and replenishment can happen or come through. It's almost like this is going to happen anyway, or like it's going to happen naturally and organically, effortlessly when you create the space to do so. You're going to receive exactly what you need to, the clarity, the insight, the wisdom, the breakthrough, the lesson, the revelations, the reconciliation, the healing, whatever. It's all going to happen. It's all going to be able to come up and out as you create the space for it. And many of you, you're going to want to even turn on the hamster wheel even more. You know, you're going to walk away from this reading and say, oh yeah, that's true, I need to do that, da, da, da. And then subconsciously what's going to come up is in 2-3 weeks, you're going to get some kind of opportunity, you know, not all of you, but some of you, and it's going to require more of you. It's going to say, oh, an extra 20 hours a week, an extra 2 classes, an extra 2, and you're going to want to do it because that's your pattern. And oh my gosh, and there's a part of you that's excited. There's a part of you that thinks it's going to get you to where you need to go. And so you're going to like mentally talk yourself into it, but it's really the part of you that wants to sabotage this. And again, you back on the hamster wheel, but not just 60 miles an hour, now 80 and then 120. Like, right? This drive will never stop. It doesn't stop. It is self-sabotage ultimately, if not self-destruction. And it's more or less intentionally keeping you from what your truth is, what needs to happen, what needs to come through, the greater healing that wants to come through for you. Yeah, and so for some of you are seeking, so I know we talked about a vision, a dream, an aspiration, a goal earlier. So I know for some of you that's going to be important and you've been seeking that and you're wondering, gosh, I've been hustling and working so hard, why isn't it happening? And for most of you, or many of you, it's because you have, there's an emotional template here that needs to be worked through in order to reveal that next level or that change or that transformation or whatever. And so for some of you that might be true. Now the other thing that's coming up, and so both could be true or maybe one is true of the both, but some of you are seeking, you know, your more passion, excitement, fulfillment in life, love, deeper romance, deeper connection, fulfilling relationships, warmth, even deeper spiritual connection, like really feeling like deep, intimate, true with someone, with something, like you're really seeking that deep sort of spiritual intimacy, love. Right? You're looking for love, but I feel like you've been looking for it in all the wrong places, i.e. that goal, that dream, the aspiration, the thing, oh, maybe this class, oh, maybe this certification, oh, maybe this thing, or oh, you know, people's approval, and if I say yes to this, and if I just keep going, and if I play martyr, and if I play rule follower, and if I do all the things. You might not be knowing this consciously, but again, subconsciously, that's what's going on, and you're agreeing to all these things because at the end of the day, you want an experience of love, intimacy, connection, spiritual union, but it's getting you further and further away from what you actually want. So, you know, when you're doing all these other sort of conditioned things, these conditioned responses based in survival, based in not enoughness, based in approval, based in all the other things that have come up today, that's actually keeping you away from what it is that you want. You're wondering, gosh, why do I feel kind of empty? Like when I sit here long enough and I'm completely honest with myself, why do I feel unfulfilled? And some of you are even seeking out that goal or dream because you're not fulfilled now. And it doesn't mean that dream or goal isn't valid. It just means that you actually separate yourself from it by you're seeking that out as a deflection or a decoy from what it is you actually want, which is that deeper harmony, fulfillment, union, etc. So the more you can seek out deeper harmony, fulfillment, union, etc., the more you actually create space in your life for that, for this deep healing and replenishment, then that goal, aspiration, dream can be revealed. Do you see? Because if you're just seeking that out, because it's like a cover, right? It's all in disguise when you're actually, what you always wanted and were seeking was that inner fulfillment, harmony, joy, peace, love, deeper connections, relationships, spiritual connection. That's what you actually want. So the more that you can cultivate that, and through that space that you're going to be creating, and through that deep healing and replenishment, this dream, goal, aspiration, the other things that you want are going to come into being, whether that's a partnership, bustling, you know, or a successful career, thriving life, whatever. It's going to come through seeking and cultivating these things. More inner traits, qualities, and experiences than outer things. A lot of you are seeking out the outer things because you don't have the inner things. But then do you see how that separates you from the dream because it's not actually true? So you have to return to the truth, which is you want the inner things, cultivate that, then the outer things will just materialize all on their own. This is how it all works. Now, as Errity, you know, the person who's reading this or whatever, do I always agree with and love the universal laws? Absolutely not. I think it's very paradoxical. It's very confusing, and I don't say it hardly works out in our favor, but it requires a lot from us. It always works out in our favor, but that's what I'm saying. Do you see that whole conflict and communication happening? So I'm with you. And yet there's a whole beauty to it, right? Intelligence to it. So last but not least, yeah. So the breakthrough that you seek, whatever it is that there is something that you've been seeking, and a lot of you have thought you were going to get it from working really hard, from doing all the things, from striving, achieving, being on the hamster wheel. In truth, that breakthrough happens not by doing all these things out here, but returning to your heart, returning to the heart of the matter, to what really counts, to what really matters, to what you really want, to yourself, creating space, deep healing and replenishment, creating the space to just be, to let things be. To let things be easy, to let things be graceful, being compassionate with yourself, honoring yourself, taking good care of yourself. That's where a lot of the things that you actually seek are going to come from. But again, for many of you, you're going to experience, if not a pretty large, if not a massive, like resistance, because this is your biggest pattern to break yet. And thus also your greatest opportunity for transformation. Your greatest breakthrough is on the horizon, and it's leaving this old survivalist, workaholism, I have to do all the things behind, and it's about creating, cultivating space for the heart of the matter, for what counts, for what matters to you uniquely, for those inner things more so than those outer things. So card pile 2, that is your reading. If this resonates for you, I encourage you to like, subscribe, do press the bell icon, share your experience in the comments. If you'd like a personal reading, you can go to erritygreen.com/shop or check out the details below. And I do have 2 other YouTube channels if they tickle your fancy, Psychic True Crime and Wise Women Television, both of which are linked below. Thank you, card pile 2. Until next time. Okay, so card pile 3, what is it that you really want? So I feel like I'm getting a couple different things on here, but we'll see. We'll let it clarify and unfold as we go. I feel like you're seeking something, you want something, you move toward it, but then you're thrown off by sort of everyday distractions and temptations. So for some of you, this could be addictions. It doesn't have to imply hard addictions. These can be soft addictions. I even have a book back here called, where is it? Somewhere, The Soft Addiction Solution. Okay, really great book, by the way. But it's like we might have something that we want, and we'll see if it gets more and more clarity as we go. But this could be anything. Is this a deep, loving and fulfilling relationship? Is this a successful, fulfilling, and thriving career? Is this a healthy, happy home and family? Is this greater health and wellness, well-being? So we'll see if we get more clarity on specifically what it is for you, but we're not getting that just yet. What we're getting is you want something, and yet it continues to remain just outside of arm's reach because of temptation, indulgence, distraction, the devil, the devil in the tarot. Just a moment. And so it continues to remain just outside of reach because you continue to be thwarted off your path or distracted off your path by short-term gratification as opposed to long-term gratification. So what this could look like is, if you're looking for a healthy, happy home or a deep, fulfilling, loving, romantic partnership or connection, and you are, instead of just going to the bar and sleeping with random people, that's not a problem, but it's not in line with what you're saying you want, right? Or if you're saying you want health, greater health and wellness and fitness and well-being, and yet every day you get your daily Starbucks coffee in the morning and in the afternoon, and both have 630 calories. I got bit by a mosquito just sitting here, so it's driving me nuts. If anybody of you are noticing, I feel like it's on my person because I have itches everywhere. Again, you might be telling yourself you want something, but your action is totally out of alignment with what it is that you seek. And of course, that's just you avoiding. That's you self-sabotaging. That's you self-destructing. That's you telling yourself you don't get to have it. That's you telling yourself you're not worthy, that you're not enough, that you don't get to have it. Okay, so like what you say you want and what you do are not aligned. And it's because you're usually choosing short-term gratification instead of long-term. I think we might get to the deeper layers of that as we go. But for right now, so some other examples is you tell yourself you want this purposeful, fulfilling job or career. And some of you don't even care about too much success, but you do want to feel good and you do want it to feel fulfilling. And that's what I feel like for most of you. That's what you require and or desire. And yet you are staying kind of the same old rote job, mechanical job, same old job, whatever, because it's easier, because it's your comfort zone, because you feel sort of secure and confident in what you do there. And for you to go out and venture into the new, you'd have to start as a rookie, as a beginner, as a newbie. You might not even realize that's what you're scared of, but it is. So what you're saying you want and what you're doing are two totally different things. And what wants to be seen here is a few different things here. Number one is that, of course, you're thwarting yourself Number 2 is you're avoiding what you actually want, and it's likely intentional. A part of you wants to avoid it because it's easier, right, to remain the same, number 1. And also, your beliefs might not be compatible with what you want to step into, like really believing in your own worth and value and having the esteem and confidence to be able to move forward and do what's required to get there. And again, that final piece of many of you kind of get off more on the thrills and the highs of short-term gratification than that sustainable, consistent, disciplined, devoted response pattern that's required to bring about anything that's fulfilling. There's this quote, it's from the movie The Weatherman, which I absolutely love. Not everybody gets it. I think it was like a cult classic. Not very many people knew it, but it had Nicolas Cage in it. I believe Michael Caine is his name. One of the quotes was, nothing that has meaning in life is easy. So I feel like for you, card pile 3, and actually moves me a little bit, brings me a little bit of emotion, is you desire so much meaning. At a deep level, I feel like you guys are all very emotional, sensitive souls. Also why it's easy for you to be thwarted and influenced by distractions and indulgences like food and maybe substances and sex and people, because you're so emotional that you can kind of get thwarted into that short-term gratification, because long-term paths tend to have less emotion involved unless we bring it and cultivate it ourselves, because it can become drudgery, right? It can become very mechanical. And so we're like, gosh, as an emotional person, it's hard to really get connected and involved and get into it or remain devoted and disciplined to something when we really can't feel it. But ultimately you want meaning. That's what you want, card pile 3. And yet you avoid it by, ironically, you're getting a high, like a thrill or emotional high, by choosing the short-term gratification, but it's not giving you that sustainable meaning that you actually seek and desire over time, right? That fulfilling partnership, that fulfilling purposeful job, that health and wellness, well-being, right? It doesn't give you that same thrill, that same high, and yet you are seeking meaning there. You are seeking meaning in whatever domain is relevant for you. That's what you actually want, right? That's why you came here today. What's your deepest yearning and desire? It's meaning. More meaning, depth, truth, authenticity, realness in each of these areas of your life, maybe in all areas of your life for some of you. And yet you tend to default or get distracted by the everyday mundane things, like social media scrolling, latte, coffee, ice cream, pizza, I don't know, taking someone home from the bar, I don't know. However it applies to you, you end up, the temptress sort of derails you from the path. And for you, obviously there's some payoff there. Again, you get the cheap thrill, but also you get to avoid the challenge or the difficulty of having to step out of your comfort zone, and you avoid having to face your own insecurity. And there was one other piece here. I mean, yeah, it's just simply easier to remain in your comfort zone and do what you've always done than have to venture out into new territory, especially when it requires something like consistency to develop a fulfilling partnership, consistency to develop health and wellness, consistency to develop a fulfilling, purposeful career that actually gives back to you. All of that requires like intention, focus, dedication, devotion, commitment. And again, as an emotional person, you might really seek that deeper meaning and connection, and you feel like you find it in short-term gratification, but the irony is that's just a high. It's short-term, it's gone in a flash, and then it's gone, and you have to then re-up it the next day. So some of you, I feel like, again, might even have addiction in some way. Again, it doesn't have to be a hard addiction, it can be a soft addiction, where because of the way this pattern, you now have some kind of biochemical thing in your brain where it's almost like if you don't get that, you now have a response or a craving for it where you might otherwise not have had it. So it's almost like you think it's going to be harder to go without it, but you only think it's harder and avoid the other path that's more sustainable and committed and whatever, because you are in this path now of sort of biochemical roller coaster. And if you didn't have that and you went through a period of sort of withdrawal, of course, if you have a heart addiction or anything that requires support, get the support. Do not trust a pick card reading or do this all on your own. Do what you need to do. Get the support. But it's like a lot of us think something's going to be hard when the only reason it's hard is because what we're actually doing now. So if you weren't doing the whole going home with someone and doing all the indulgence and thrill seeking and whatever you're doing, you actually wouldn't have. So I got a call. I do apologize, card pile 3. But essentially, I don't know where I was at, but I'm sure it was something that I already said multiple times in different ways. So more or less, you are thrown off the path by temptation, and the temptation itself is actually what makes you believe it's harder to do the other thing. It wouldn't be so hard if you weren't used to a high all the time. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. So what you're being asked to do is begin to take the necessary steps to do what you want to do, to really bring about this change, this shift, to bring more fulfillment, meaning, and purpose to your life. Like, you so deeply want that. You're being asked to give yourself permission to seek that out, to do what's required in order for you to get there. You're being asked to begin to take the necessary steps. Now, if some of you, I do feel very clearly, at least a good 30%, maybe 20, but you might need some professional support, whether that is actual medical support and or that's mentor, therapist, coach, energy worker, whatever kind of mentor you would like in your corner. It really is up to you and your situation. But I feel like some of you, it's going to be hard for you to really kind of unstick yourself from the old lifestyle, from the old you, and really set yourself on the path of what you truly ultimately want. So if that's the case, get the help. But for many of you, for the remaining of you, what you've been, when we have this card, take a look. Let me just show you, because I feel like it's important to show. I think these cards are so illuminating. So what you want, that you keep at arm's distance. Temptress throws you off. You've been on this sort of long and lonely search. You don't know that you're lonely because you probably surround yourself with a lot of friends, maybe substances, drugs, fun, temptations of all kinds and sorts. And it doesn't mean that it has to be wrong or bad. Like, I don't think anything is wrong all by itself, right? I think we have to determine what's wrong, quote unquote, based on our own values, based on what it is we want. And if it's completely out of alignment, it might very well be wrong for you, or at least wrong for you right now. But you're being asked to take the necessary steps to move forward, to honor yourself, and to honor this quest for meaning, the soul searching, right? So card pile 3, what you're seeking is meaning, that deep yearning for a soul searching, to really uncover, discover what it is that you want most and begin to move toward that. I think most of you know, though. Here's what's interesting. Most of you are aware, and yet I feel like you suppress it, deny it, keep it at bay or whatever with a lot of these distractions. And it's easier to just have the distraction than it is to face what it is that you really want and be completely honest with yourself that you don't have it yet and or want it that badly, right? So there's something there, for you. You guys have 2 cards. Seriously, look at this. 2 cards about bringing something into form, moving forward, taking the necessary steps, doing what you must do. You have 2 of them. Now, I do have a timing issue right now on my camera, so I will be right back. So card pile 3, again, we're just to return to where we were at. You're being asked to journey forward, to step into the new frontier, to move into, doesn't feel like the next chapter. It just feels like moving into or moving toward what it is that you truly, honestly, genuinely want. Now, for some of you, I feel like it's to leave your hometown, Some of you have been pondering for a long time, but it could also be sort of going on this trip of a lifetime. It could be about leaving your home state and or your current residence. Maybe you've had a long-standing dream to go to the other side of the country or live on the other side of the world. But for some of you might have a desire around that. Some of you might have a desire around, again, a long-term partnership or romance, but you haven't been allowing yourself that. I feel for some of you, you've actually come out of a relationship and sort of not given yourself permission to move on and to connect with someone new. And this might be your opportunity to really be honest with yourself again and give yourself permission to pursue that if it is what you want. If when you're honest with yourself, you recognize very truly, madly, deeply that that is the thing, that's what you want. In whatever form that it takes, again, we covered many domains here over the course of the reading around health and well-being, and health and wellness, around relationship, partnership, family, romance, healthy, happy home, career, job, being more in your purpose. So whichever form it's taking for you, you're being asked to move toward that. I think this first step really is giving yourself, first of all, being honest with yourself. And obviously that's why you're here. And now you're like, holy shit, called me out. Yes, that's right. And I think the next step is just giving yourself permission to fully own that. Because I think right now your greatest challenge in untethering yourself or stepping outside of your comfort zone is less about taking the actual step, although that might be challenging down the road. I think for many of you, it's even facing yourself honestly and facing this pattern of short-term versus long-term gratification, facing this pattern of superficiality versus deeper meaning and purpose, focusing on or residing within the comfort zone more than new territory. Recognizing that you tend to choose where you feel comfortable because you feel confident, as opposed to pursuing the frontiers that will actually be more meaningful, fulfilling, and purposeful for you, because you might not feel confident, that you might actually feel like a rookie or feel new or make some mistakes or trip up, and it's too hard for you to face that and swallow that. It might be too hard a pill for you to swallow. So I think that's the number one thing, is recognizing this pattern in yourself, recognizing how you take a step back. And I feel like for so many of you, that's all you needed to see today. I don't feel that for many of you, you're going to be taking the first step toward your brand new life tomorrow. I just don't feel that. I feel like there's some inner work, some reflection here that's required to really see how this pattern has been showing up in your life and world, and how you have been holding yourself back from what it is you want. You know, some of you might have a pattern too of blaming the outside world and your family and all the things and everything everyone's ever done to you. It's going to be all of you, but a handful. And when in truth, you're looking at this, you're like, oh crap, actually, I've been doing a lot of this. Oops. My bad. And so facing yourself honestly is your first step, card pile 3. Facing yourself honestly, facing this pattern, being transparent with yourself. If you're really doing this work and you're doing it in a way that is real and true, there is likely going to be emotion. You know, you might find that you're called to like write a letter or journal some of this out, or create some kind of art in some way, or share your story. And that's not going to be the case for all of you. Again, some of you might need more formal support, but allow yourself to sort of process through this and not just be like, okay, I've been honest with myself, you know, and now I'm just gonna go back to what I did. Because again, many of you, I don't think are gonna be ready to take that leap. But number one, looking at yourself in the mirror. Number 2, seeing how this pattern plays out in your life. Number 3, recognizing what your truer, deeper desires are in whatever domains we talked about, but especially recognizing you actually seek meaning and not all the superficial stuff that you kind of fill your life with. And number 4, then giving yourself permission to have that, to be that, to experience that, to own that. There is a gap here, and for many of you, it's not going to be for all of you, but for many or most of you actually, there's an unworthiness there that's driving this whole ship. I will just fill my life with bullshit, and I know that's a strong word, but I will fill my life with bullshit because I don't believe that I'm worthy of anything else anyway. I'll fill my life with bullshit because then I don't have to face the fact that I won't ever actually get what I want. I'll fill my life with bullshit because then I won't have to actually face what I don't like about myself. I'm going to fill my life with bullshit so I don't have to face that I lost so-and-so and such and such. Do you see what I'm saying there? Some pretty deep stuff. So if you find that you need some more support, of course you can reach out to me. I can, I do offer personal readings, but I really want this to be about you and what you need. I can refer you out, or of course get the support elsewhere. But I do feel like, support could be worthwhile for you, card pile 3, because I feel like I don't want to say you've dug a hole, but you're kind of in there, and we've all been there, so there's no judgment, okay? I'm in there in one area of my life. I'm going to be completely honest with you. Health and wellness. So, yeah. No judgment here. Holding you and my heart, and holding out the highest visions for you as well, card pile 3, and wishing you the best of luck on this journey and as much support as you might need as you go. So if this resonates for you, if you find you like this reading, I encourage you to like, subscribe, press the bell icon, do share your story in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Again, you can check out my details below or at erritygreen.com if you desire a personal reading or want to get some referrals, like in terms of who might be able to assist you if that's something that you're seeking. And I do offer, or I have 2 other YouTube channels, Psychic True Crime and Wise Women Television. You can check out those links below if either or both tickle your fancy. Thank you, card pile 3. Until next time. All right, so card pile 4. So your deepest, truest longing. Okay, your deepest, truest desire and yearning. So what's coming through here is, I will say that when I pulled out the cards and did a general look, there is something here around relationship, around romance, around desiring a deep bond, a connection with somebody else. That may not be the case for everybody, and we have significantly longer to go here for this reading, as each of these has tended to be a little bit lengthier today. So don't run, but I think this might be if that's not you and it doesn't resonate right away, give it some time. But I feel like for most of you, how this is going to unfold is around a deep yearning and longing for connection, for union, for communion, for partnership, coming together in union with somebody else. Partnership, bond, connection, companionship. Some of you that may look more traditional like marriage, and for some of you maybe it's just a domestic partner, whatever, however, you would like that. I feel like you've been seeking that. But here's the interesting piece is the reading, even though that flare kind of came up and that was clear right off the bat, kind of the aura of that pile, that's not even what it jumps into. The very first thing that pops up here is that you've been through, could it be like a trial by fire, like that just came up, where you've been through a series of initiations or challenges or difficulties or setbacks, but in one way or another, you've been through sort of like a tunnel where it might have felt different from your life the way that it was before. And I'm not gathering the exact words, like as you noticed, I'm a little bit challenged with it, but what I am overall feeling is that whatever it is that you went through, whatever that transition is, or whatever it is you're moving through now, it has everything to do with releasing your ties to the past, releasing allegiance to the past, your old subscriptions, agreements, and primarily it had to do with what you were willing to give yourself. So there's something here for card pile 4 specifically about self-love that then for many of you or most of you then develops into a soulmate union, twin flame union, life partner union, whatever, long-term partner union, whatever it is you seek. Now, again, if that doesn't resonate at all, this pile could very much be about self-love for you, but I think a good, 60-70%, this is the relationship pile of the whole several options here today. So the very first thing that's coming up is you went through this experience, you went through this transition, you've walked through this tunnel, maybe this valley of the shadow of death, whatever recent season of life you've just encountered or been navigating or walking through now has everything to do with coming into greater remembrance of who you are, of your soul, of your worth, of your value, of you being able to sort of stand on your own 2 feet and really honor yourself. So you might have been through a period, or whether it was your whole life or just a period or a season of your life, where I feel like in relationships specifically, although it's probably all around, that you didn't value yourself highly enough. You didn't treat yourself highly enough. You would enter into relationships or connections that didn't value, that didn't see you, that didn't appreciate you, that didn't take proper and good care of you. And it was how you were seeing yourself ultimately. When you get to a point of a certain amount of self-love and self-value and self-worth, you aren't going to mess with just anybody off the street. There's going to be a certain level of standards there. There's going to be a certain awareness of red flags there. There's going to be a certain desire of green flags there. And so you're coming into greater knowing and love of yourself. And as a result, you're coming into greater knowing and love for, or even awareness around what you might seek when it comes to love, romance, connection, partnership, companionship. Because primarily, even though there's a relationship flare here, again, for a good majority of you, maybe not all of you, this is primarily about self-love, and it's about like the hero-heroine's journey, about the soul coming to know itself. It's about the soul coming to know their deeper truths, their deeper layers. It's about kind of once we walk through and navigate that journey, we find ourselves in a position where we can enter into a harmonious connection or a fulfilling partnership or anything though. You might not be here necessarily for relationship, although I think many of you will be, because this is one of the only ones that discuss relationship aside from a little bit of card pile 1. And I think there were many parts of your life that did not reflect your value. I think there were many parts of your life that weren't truly seeing you. I think there were many parts of your life where you weren't being fully honored, seen, heard, loved, appreciated, on and on. So this is also the self-worth pile, okay? The self-love pile, the relationship pile. And so you might have found that a lot of your relationships, whether romantic or otherwise, weren't really meeting you at the level that you deeply, truly desired, which you might really, this could be the intimacy pile, right? Intimacy with self and intimacy with other. That really may be what it is, your deepest, truest longing. We'll see as we go. We might refine that a little bit more, but so far I feel like that's what it is. And you found that maybe your family of origin didn't value you, or that these relationships weren't up to par in the way that you would deeply long and seek for, and that you might have seen reflections of that in your relationships, maybe even your friendship circles, your community, your romantic partners, your romantic connections. You just found that maybe they were subpar or unfulfilling in some ways. Some of them could have been chaotic and or unhealthy or toxic. Maybe not harmonious, maybe not fulfilling, but one way or the other, they weren't measuring up. And maybe you didn't even know why. Maybe you couldn't pinpoint why. Maybe you couldn't pinpoint the disillusionment or dissatisfaction or whatever that was there. But it all had to do with you not valuing yourself and therefore not being valued in the relationship. Now, this doesn't mean, of course, or imply that we get to choose our family of origin. We're sort of born into, well, not sort of born into that. We are born into that. We don't really get a choice. But at that point, it's really up to our own boundaries and standards for ourselves that then determines the course of those relationships and how fulfilling they are or are not for us. And so you've been discovering your worth, you've been discovering your value, you've been leaving behind a lot of conditioning for yourself. This could have to do with even like impoverished mindset or scarcity mindset, lack mentality. I feel like you've been leaving a lot of things behind around in terms of your conditioning in your childhood, your conditioning in relationships, your conditioning in the dynamics of people in relationship. I feel like you've been through a whole reset and recalibration of who you are from bottom to top. I feel like you are being reprogrammed, almost like a computer where you were one program before, you know, and now you're a totally different program. And obviously you're you, so you may not be able to see that as maybe clearly as somebody else or a third party perspective, but you're very much being rewritten from top to bottom, left and right, back and forward, right? You're being rewritten into someone who does value themselves, into someone who does honor themselves, into someone who does honor their own callings, the callings of their own soul. Feels like, again, a lot of the pieces of your life weren't reflecting who you truly are or what you truly want for yourself, especially not in connection. But I feel like the overall context of your life reflected something similar. And I think perhaps for some of you, the reason the relationship piece didn't come out in the first set of cards and is more so just in the overall whiff of it and then in the ongoing couple of cards is because I wonder if you even know that's your deepest longing. I wonder if that's your more conscious awareness is around releasing conditioning. You might be aware of that. You might be aware of that you've released some limitations or self-imposed limitations and perceptions and made some mindset shifts over the years. You might be aware that you've done some inner child healing and some trauma healing and so on and so forth. You might be totally aware of that. You might be consciously aware that you're stepping into a more authentic version of you. This has been a soul's journey for you, maybe even very trying and challenging for you at different points and periods. I feel like consciously you're well aware that you have cocooned and been through a metamorphosis and come out a truer, cleaner meaning more pure to you, version of you than probably ever before. And perhaps have found levels of fulfillment and peace and spiritual communion and connection that maybe you never found before, and it's been profound for you. And it's been as a result of leaving a lot of things behind, and a lot of it was inner work for you, the way that you saw things, the way that you perceived things, whether or not you allowed yourself to receive, again, your expectations, boundaries, on and on, right? I think a lot of it has been an inner not challenge, but an inner journeying for you, and now you're kind of coming out the other side, reborn in a way, the phoenix, so to speak. And you may not even recognize that subconsciously. I mean, many of you probably will, but I feel like because it wasn't even mentioned right off the bat, but then shows up later, that maybe it's more subconsciously what you're seeking is a deeper union, deeper connection, deeper intimacy. And what's going to bring about the kind of intimacy you seek, which is a high level. And I don't mean high level, like really super tight and close, like attached. I mean high level, like the levels of intimacy that a lot of us seek we can't even access or find or be available for or receive on planet Earth in the human condition. We're just, based on our conditioning, based on our nervous system, based on what we can handle, what we have the capacity for, what we have the dynamics and what we can wrap our head around, all of that stuff. That's a lot of work, from the ground up, like we were saying, and not everybody's going to get there and be available for the kind of sort of divine union that you very well seek. And maybe divine union is your deep longing and truest desire, divine union with self, with God, with spirit, with life, with other. And I feel like that's really where we're headed with card 4. And in order for you to experience this divine union with self, with other, with life, with God, great spirit, cosmos, universe, Mother Earth, for you to have this really deep soul connection, this intimacy that you seek with life and with all things, and including with other, for it to be reflected in a partnership or relationship, you had to do some serious deep healing to release a lot of SHIT from the past in order to become available for the kind of union that you sought all along. Union with yourself and union with other. I think that's really what we're landing on here. Union with self and union with other. And for you, I don't think actually it's just for romantic partnership. I feel like in general, you might be someone you might be a Scorpio, you might have a Cancer moon, you might be someone who has some serious depth and layers and emotion to you where superficial stuff just doesn't cut it for you. Icing on the cake isn't good enough. You want to be able to savor and sink your teeth into something really deep, soulful, beautiful, even haunting, right? like you want something like that, the surface level SHIT is not going to do it. That's where it's at for you. That's what does it for you. But in order for you to actually even accomplish that, you didn't even know it maybe, but in order for that to happen, a lot of stuff had to be cleared out. And again, most people on the planet Earth wouldn't be available for the level of divine union that they want or think that they want or think that they can have. You know, it requires a lot of releasing in order to find yourself in that place where you could genuinely connect with someone at a profound level. And that's what you seek. It's almost like it's not good enough to know the outside of something. You would know the inside, the nuts and bolts, the root. You know, you're the type of person who wants to get to the very bottom of something. You're someone who can't just be told 2 + 2 = 4. You need to know why, how you got there from A to Z, and then be able to do it yourself a few times or more, or on, right? You're one of those people that needs to know and get really deep with something. And I feel like, you know, in order for that to happen for you, you had to go through this deep healing period. And so you noticed whatever this journey, transition, pause, reflection time, whatever it was for you, you noticed. You might not have noticed exactly what it was or knew what was going on, but you knew something was happening internally, even externally for some of you, where it was clear that there was some kind of detox, cleansing, healing, shifting, transformation happening. And it was a metamorphosis so that you could come out the other side sort of truer unto you and more available for that divine union, that depth that you seek in life. So let's see what's coming up here. What else is coming up here? Yeah, I feel like a couple of things here. Yeah, we already talked about this, but you wanted to come into divine union, and part of it was, yes, in order for you to attract this, in order for you to be available for it, in order for you to engage with it, you had to have gone through this healing. Because, so as an example, sometimes people don't understand why. They're like, well, why? And you don't have to be perfect, right? You don't have to be an ideal in order to access the greater things of life. And I always want to make that clear in my pick a card readings and in my work with people, because we can get a lot of these messages, especially on pick a card readings, that you have to be A, B, C, D, E, F, G in order to. If you want the job, if you want the manifestation, if you want the millions, if you want the partner, if you want the house, all the things, you have to be A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and like, you know, you have to like measure up on every level. And that's not what it is. It's much more about, you know, you can learn and grow and enjoy the journey, right? Like you can get a house, but it may not be the best house. You can get a partner, but it may not be the highest potential partner. Like you can always do what you want. You can always access the things that you want, but you may not be at the level where you can access like cream of the crop, VIP, highest potential, because you're not highest potential, right? We can only really attract, I mean, there's even research out there that people tend to hover around their own attractiveness level. So if they're, you know, based on other people, right, having been measured and through a data collection system and so on and so forth, that they're an 8, they're going to hover around 7 to 9. They're not going to go to 2, they're not going to go to 10. It's how it works. And so you can always get what you want. And I want to make sure that that's affirmed and clear. And yet we as humans tend to want the most, the best. You know, we want to have that VIP, like most of us, whether or not we ever actualize it or are honest with ourselves and tell ourselves that, or give ourselves permission to feel that, or move toward it, or actually do the damn thing that's required in order to get there. All of us usually want, right? We want the happy, healthy home. We want, and family. We want the divine union partnership. We want the spiritual connection and communion. We want the, you know, really soulful spiritual practice. We want the career that's thriving and successful and fulfilling and purposeful. We want to make impact in the world, and we want to have enough freedom to live our lives well and to love well. So it's like we want all these things. Everybody wants those things, right? And we can all have a version of those things as we go, but if we want the deepest, most profound, the bestest, it's going to require us to do the work of that in order to access that. Because again, even if you were to face that big house, like someone were to gift you a house, we often hear about lottery winners. They are given millions of dollars and they squander it. It's gone in a flash. Why? Because they weren't yet prepared to be able to manage that level of wealth. Right? Same thing, you'd be gifted a house and you might not either properly take care of it, or you'll find a way to self-sabotage to where you end up having to sell it, or, you know, it ends up being, what is it, when the bank takes it back and whatever. Like, oftentimes, if we aren't ready, we will find a way to sabotage and run away. Even when it comes to like a beautiful person, if you were to meet someone who absolutely adores you and is that cream of the crop partner, if you aren't ready to receive that level of love, there will be an insecurity there. You will push them away or find one way to do it. One way or another to do it. Maybe you're pushing them away, maybe you're getting clingy, whatever, to where it's not going to work out, right? So it doesn't mean that these things might not enter our world, but in order for us to maintain it or sustain it, it's going to require that we be at that level. And so now you've kind of come into this, through this journey, you've come into the other side of this to where you are available for all the things that you want. Now, I am getting a little bit of a flavor now. We touched on relationship, but I'm also getting, some of you have sought success. I know I touched on other examples as well, but now you're on the other side of this change, this metamorphosis that's going to avail you to all the things that you sought. Whatever that pot of gold at the end of the rainbow was for you uniquely, card pile 4, that is on its way as a result of the work that you've done. It could be divine union and partnership, divine union with self. It could also be levels of success, or a greater level of success, of thriving. I feel like whatever it is that you sought all along is now on its way. Now, I know I said this is the relationship pile. I also said this is like the divine union with self and other pile. But I also feel like this is the success pile. So hopefully those who started the reading have finished it to be able to get this other information, where it's like whatever it was that you have been seeking, or whatever it is that you sought, or even if you weren't actively pursuing anything, it was just something that kind of sat in your heart or resided in your subconscious, something that you were born with, even like a soul desire that you were always meant to become, impart, embody, share with the world, whatever. It's like now it's going to become actualized. Now you've entered manifestation. It's like all the other stuff up until now was like, I don't want to say child's play, that's a fun word to use, but it was like, it was building it, right? It was building the foundation of, it was building the infrastructure of, it was building the back end of, it was building the framework for, it was building the program for. Now that you have all of that online, on board, and like ready to go, now you can quote unquote call in and or experience all of these levels of success, love, all the different domains that we've talked about today that you have desired all along, right? It's like your soul's legacy is now being unfolded and unveiled for you. You might be seeing the beginning pieces of this. I don't think you're full-fledged manifestation mode right now. I don't even know if you would be here listening to this if you were. But I feel like you're definitely seeing some beginning opportunities, new opportunities. You're seeing the beginning phases of things. You're starting to notice how things are shifting, like things are gathering momentum. Things feel a little bit more accelerated. Things feel a little bit lighter. Things are starting to drop into your reality. Clarity is landing in a new way. Revelations are hitting you. And so there's something here about new things popping up though in your physical reality and mirroring the change, but also you're starting to notice that things are actually starting to manifest now. All the things that you've sought or wanted all along are now starting to happen and unfold and come to fruition for you. Yeah, your big, bold vision. Oh my gosh, card pile 4. I sure hope you guys who started are finishing. And of course, those who are here did continue, and those who aren't will never get this message. That's unfortunate, because that big, bold vision that you've wanted that includes all the things is happening now. And it's like all you had to do was go through that. Like go through that journey of the underworld, basically. Inanna, if you've looked up the myth of Inanna and the underworld, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but basically she has to give up everything, sacrifice herself, almost nearly her soul, but in return she gains the world, kind of thing. And it's like that. You have given it all. You've given it all away, top to bottom, back and forth. Like I said, you've really been through deep healing, detox, cleansing. This could even have been a crisis for some of you, and or something that was incredible, profound for you. I feel like a lot of the change was inner, so maybe not all of you had massive shifts on the outside, but I feel like everybody had shifts on the inside, and some people had shifts on the outside too that led to these inner shifts. But whichever way that it took, whichever form that it took, it's now given way to your vision to come through. So all that loss, the hidden gift was that you are given the treasure. You're given the pot at the end of the rainbow. You're given your dream. You've earned it. It's like the hero or heroine's journey, but it's like, there is one who, right, they kind of go on that huge quest. They do all the things, and they slay all the dragons, and they face all their demons, and then they are given the world as a result of giving their all, of having done the thing, of having scaled the wall and saved the princess and all the things. Like, you've done it all, and now as a result, you've won, but you've won. So you will find that your vision is starting to manifest. It's already manifesting. This is well underway. I think it's clear to you that this is happening for you. And what wants to be told to you specifically, card pile 4. So I'm taking out divine union, by the way. Even though it's relevant, that's a theme. I'm taking out, that can still be relevant. That can still be a part of it. And success. But ultimately, what is this? What do you deeply long and yearn for? What is your deepest desire? It's this vision of all the things. And you get to have all the things. You get to have the happy, healthy home, the health, well-being, and the fitness. You get to have a divine union and partnership. You get to have a thriving, fulfilling, purposeful career that makes impact and serves you well. You get to have all of it. Like you've wanted your cake and eat it, and you wanted to eat it too. You, card pile 4 of all the piles, will have all of it. And it's because you've done the work. You've walked through the initiation. You've walked through the valley of the shadow of death, and you've delivered yourself. And now you have found yourself in the promised land. So good on you, card pile 4. Your deepest longing was this vision, and all that shit that you went through the past several years, or even shorter period, maybe 2 years for some of you, but there was a season of life where you went through a lot. Cleanse, detox, metamorphosis, shifts, changes, crises, whatever. All of that was purposeful, and it was bringing you to the promised land, to what you've always wanted, and now it's happening for you. So good on you, card pile 4. I definitely want to hear your comments and shares and stories in the comments. Please do tell me. I want to know what your visions are. I want to know what manifestations you're already seeing. It's like landing in your lap now, or like yesterday. It's happening. So good for you. Also, of course, if you like this reading, like, subscribe, press the bell icon. That way you receive notifications every single time a new reading pops up. If you would like a personal reading from me, you can check out those details at my website or at the link below. Also, I have 2 other YouTube channels that might be of interest to you. Psychic True Crime, Wise Women Television. You can check out those links below as well. Thank you, card pile 4, and we'll talk soon.